What happens when Hollywood legend Sylvester Stallone walks into what he believes will be a routine promotional interview, only to find himself blindsided by a host who seems determined to drag him down rather than celebrate his work? What unfolded on live television that morning wasn't just another celebrity Q&A. It became one of the most shocking, unforgettable confrontations ever captured on camera, a moment where one of America's most beloved action stars found himself pushed to his breaking point and unleashed decades of pent-up frustration in front of millions. Before we get into the chaos, make sure to hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments what you think really set this explosive clash into motion, because trust me, you've never seen Stallone like this before. The day started innocently enough at the View's Manhattan studios. Stallone, now in his 70s but still built like the powerhouse who first stepped into the ring as Rocky Balboa, arrived early with his trademark quiet professionalism, calmly sitting in the makeup chair as assistants flurried around, dusting powder across his face and straightening his jacket. "Mr. Stallone, the ladies can't wait to talk to you," chirped one assistant, brimming with excitement. "They've got so many questions about your new project." Stallone grunted softly, his gravelly voice low as he muttered, "Yeah, should be good. Always happy to talk about the work." But beneath the usual pre-show buzz, there was something different in the air. Backstage, Joy Behar had been unusually charged, her tone sharp during the morning prep as she told her co-host, "I've got real questions for Rocky today. No coasting on nostalgia, no softball stuff. It's time someone stopped kissing up to these guys who live off their old movies." Her smirk unsettled even the production staff. By the time the cameras rolled and the bright theme music filled the studio, the atmosphere was deceptively cheerful. The host smiled, the table gleamed under the lights, and Joy leaned forward with a folder stuffed full of notes, a rare level of preparation for a celebrity guest. "Welcome back to The View," she beamed at the audience. "Today we got the one and only Sylvester Stallone, the man behind Rocky, Rambo, and countless classics that have inspired generations. Sly, welcome to the show." Stallone leaned forward with practiced ease, his huge hands folded calmly on the table. "Thanks for having me, Joy. Great to be here." Then, in a voice deceptively smooth but edged with steel, Joy fired the opening shot. "You're still making action movies at your age. Don't you think it's time to step aside and let younger actors take those roles?" The audience gasped. Whoopi shifted uneasily in her chair, and Sarah Haynes darted a glance toward producers like she was silently asking, "What is happening?" Stallone didn't flinch, but his eyes narrowed slightly, a tiny crack in his calm exterior. "Well, Joy," he said evenly, "as long as audiences still want the stories and I'm physically capable of telling them, age is just a number. Clint Eastwood made westerns into his 80s. But Clint Eastwood is Clint Eastwood." Joy snapped back, her voice dripping with challenge. "Let's be honest, your recent films haven't exactly been breaking records. Isn't this more about ego than the audience?" The crowd, once clapping with excitement, went uncomfortably quiet. Stallone jaw flexed, but his tone remained measured. The numbers speak for themselves. The Expendables has been a hit. Creed brought Rocky to a new generation. People still connect with these characters. This isn't about ego, it's about stories worth telling. Joy smirked, flipping her notes with theatrical flair. "Speaking of Creed, wasn't that really Michael B. Jordan's movie? You were basically there as nostalgia bait, right? Just replaying the same guy you created 40 years ago." Even Whoopi tried to cut in, her voice soft but firm. "Sly, I think what we'd all love to hear is how you keep yourself in such phenomenal shape after all these years." But Joy wasn't letting go. She ignored Whoopi entirely, her eyes fixed on Stallone with unsettling determination. "No, I want to hear this. Because Hollywood's got a problem, and it's guys like Stallone, aging male stars who just can't accept their time is over. Instead of making space for fresh talent, they keep milking the same roles over and over." The studio fell silent again, every camera operator leaning in as if sensing something was about to break. Stallone's fingers curled tighter around his hands, his body still controlled but radiating tension like a coiled spring. Then, in a low, resonant voice that carried the weight of 5 decades of blood, sweat, and sacrifice, Stallone finally answered, "Joy, I'm not sure what you're trying to do here, but I've spent 50 years building characters, telling stories, and giving everything I've got to this industry. If you think that's just ego, maybe you've never understood what it takes to fight for relevance in this business. Low but cutting like steel. No, Joy, you're not asking questions. You're taking shots. You're twisting everything I've worked for into some kind of cheap narrative, and I'm not going to sit here and let you rewrite my life story because it makes for good television. His words rang out like a challenge, hanging in the studio like smoke after a gunshot, and suddenly the entire room shifted. The audience froze, breaths caught in their throats, sensing they were no longer watching a light-hearted interview but a high-stakes confrontation. The other co-host shifted uncomfortably, Alyssa trying to scribble something on her notes as if she could hide from what was unfolding, while Sarah's eyes darted nervously toward producers off-camera. Whoopi leaned forward, her voice caught somewhere between warning and mediation, but she didn't speak. She knew better than to step between two titans in the middle of a collision. Joy, however, was not backing down. She smirked, leaning her elbow on the table and tilting her head towards Stallone with a look that oozed defiance. Sly, come on. Nobody's rewriting your story. But at some point, you got to admit the truth. Your time has passed. You're still trying to be the tough guy, the underdog, but you're not Rocky anymore. You're just an aging star clinging to old glories. The words sliced through the room like a blade, and gasps erupted from the studio audience. Even seasoned fans of The View had never heard such blunt disrespect, and some audibly booed under their breath before quickly falling silent, afraid to break the tension. Stallone's eyes narrowed, the same steely glare that had once silenced opponents in the ring as Rocky now directed squarely at Joy. His jaw clenched, his body leaned forward, and his voice rolled out deep and deliberate, like thunder gathering before a storm. You think I'm clinging? Let me tell you something about clinging. Joy, I've been knocked down in this business more times than you can count. I've had studios lob me out of the room. Critics call me a joke. People tell me I was washed up 20 years ago. And every single time, I've gotten back up. I wrote my own scripts, produced my own movies, fought for my place when no one wanted me there. That's not clinging. That's survival. That's fighting. That's what Rocky was always about, the will to keep moving forward no matter how many times life throws a punch. A ripple of applause began to spread through the audience, hesitant at first but growing louder until it became a wave of support. Stallone's words had struck a chord, pulling people to their feet as if they too were standing in defiance of Joy's attack. Yet Joy, ever determined, raised her voice above the noise, her smile now sharp, her tone more cutting than ever. Or maybe it's just ego, Stallone. Maybe you can't let go because you're afraid of what life looks like without the spotlight on you. The applause cut off instantly, the room plunging back into an uneasy silence so thick you could almost hear the cameras whirring. Even the crew had frozen, their hands hovering over controls, afraid to miss a second. Stallone's composure cracked for the first time. His palms slammed down on the table with a force that rattled the mugs and papers, the sudden sound jolting everyone like a gunshot. His voice exploded, gravelly yet booming, filling every corner of the studio. Ego? You think this is about ego? You think I'm afraid of being forgotten? Let me tell you something. I didn't start in the spotlight. Joy. I started broke, sleeping in bus stations, rejected by every casting director in town. I sold my dog just to eat. I had nothing, and I still fought my way into this business. Fame didn't build me. I built fame. And if it all disappeared tomorrow, I'd still be standing because I've already lived without it. That's not ego. That's survival. That's blood, sweat, and sacrifice. The crowd erupted again, this time uncontrollable, clapping, shouting, some even chanting Rocky, Rocky, like they were in the middle of a prize fight instead of a morning talk show. Joy's smirk faltered, her eyes flickering with the first signs of doubt, but she tried to push through, raising her voice once more. Oh, please. All those stories are ancient history. What have you done lately beside play the same tired characters over and over again? The attack landed like a sucker punch, drawing a shocked chorus of oohs from the audience. Stallone leaned back in his chair now, posture shifting, no longer defensive but dangerous, like a fighter waiting for the bell to ring. His eyes locked on Joy with laser precision, and when he spoke again his voice was calm. But beneath that calm was the unmistakable weight of fury. What have I done lately? I've created entire franchises that put food on the table for dozens of actors and stunt performers who might never have had a chance otherwise. I've mentored young directors and writers, given them a stage when Hollywood wouldn't. I've used my platform to tell stories about underdogs, people who refuse to quit, who keep getting back up no matter what life throws at them. That's what I've done. That's what I still do. And the only reason you can sit here and dismiss it so casually is because you've never had to fight for anything the way I have. The audience roared in approval, some rising to their feet in solidarity as Joy's expression flickered between anger and disbelief. But Stallone wasn't finished. His eyes burned, his chest heaved, and his final words cut through the noise like a blade. You don't have a problem with my movies, Joy. You have a problem with me. And maybe it's because deep down, you know you could never survive what I survived. You could never take the hits I've taken and keep coming back. And that's a difference. I'm not Rocky because I play him in a movie. I'm Rocky because I live it every damn day. Instructions from producers screaming in her ear, but even she seemed paralyzed by the sheer force of what was unfolding in front of her. Stallone was now standing, towering over the table, his frame filling the camera shot like a man who had just walked out of one of his own films, veins visible on his temples as decades of suppressed frustration came flooding to the surface. You think you're giving constructive criticism, he bellowed, his voice rattling the mugs, the papers, even the nervous laughter of the audience members who didn't know whether to clap or hide under their seats. Constructive criticism is when somebody looks you in the eye and tells you the truth because they want you to be better, because they respect the blood and sweat you've put into your wake. What you've been doing here, Joy, is trying to humiliate me, to belittle me, to take 50 years of struggle and triumph and reduce it to a punchline on your morning show. That's not journalism. That's cowardice dressed up as commentary. His words were so sharp they seemed to slice the air, and the silence that followed was suffocating. Sarah had put down her pen entirely, her hands trembling slightly as she folded them in her lap. Alyssa's eyes were darting back and forth like a spectator caught ringside in a fight that had spiraled out of control. Joy attempted to regain her footing, straightening in her chair and forcing her trademark smirk back onto her face. But the strain was obvious now, the confidence gone from her eyes. I'm just saying people want new voices, Sly, she said, her voice wobbling in a way the microphones betrayed mercilessly. You can't dominate forever. That line, meant to diffuse, only poured gasoline on the fire. Stallone leaned forward, fists pressed to the table, and the camera zoomed so close the sweat on his brow glistened under the studio lights. Dominate? Do you have any idea what it takes to last in this business for half a century? Do you have any clue how many nights I went hungry, how many times I was laughed out of offices, told I'd never make it, told I didn't have the look, didn't have the talent, didn't have the voice? You want to talk about privilege? My privilege was sleeping in bus stations with holes in my shoes while I prayed somebody would just give me one chance. One. And when they didn't, I made my own. I wrote Rocky. I fought to play him when the studios wanted someone else. And now you sit there, after all these years, calling me old, sensitive, washed up, greedy? Lady, you couldn't carry the weight of one of my failures, let alone one of my victories. The audience erupted. Cheers, applause, whistles echoing through the studio as if the set itself had transformed into Madison Square Garden. The producers were in chaos, crew members signaling frantically, unsure if they should cut to commercial or ride the storm. Joy, red-faced but still trying to mask it with sarcasm, muttered, "Wow, touchy much." But the words only made things worse. Stallone jabbed a finger toward her, his voice low now, steady, the kind of calm that was more dangerous than shouting. Touchy? No, I'm passionate. I've given everything I am to this craft, to these characters, to the people who find hope in them. And I'll never apologize for that. You think it's about ego? No. It's about survival, about proving to every kid out there who's told they're not enough that they can get back up and fight again. That's what I stand for, Joy. That's who I am. And if you can't see that, then maybe the problem isn't me being too old. It's you being too blind. Instructions from control room were buzzing in Whoopi's ear, producers desperately signaling to cut to commercial. But even she seemed paralyzed by the intensity of the moment, frozen by the sheer force of what was unraveling live on air. You want to know about taking opportunities away from people. Stallone thundered, his gravelly voice building to a crescendo that echoed through the silent studio like a war drum. What about the opportunity you just stole from your viewers to actually hear something meaningful about the craft of filmmaking, about the heart of storytelling, about what it really takes to create characters that endure across generations? Instead, you turn this into some kind of ambush, a cheap personal attack wrapped in the language of social justice. Joy tried to steady her voice, but the tremor betrayed her. Sly, I think you need to calm down. Stallone laughed bitterly, a harsh, cutting sound that drew gasps from the audience. Calm down? You spend 20 minutes trying to humiliate me on live television, questioning my integrity, my work ethic, my right to even exist in the industry I bled for, and now you tell me to calm down? Who exactly do you think you are? The studio was so silent that the hum of the overhead lights and the click of camera equipment was suddenly audible. Even the stage crew had stopped moving, transfixed by what they were witnessing unfold in real time. Stallone straightened, his voice now steady but carrying decades of frustration. I've been Rocky Balboa for 50 years. Do you know what that means? Joy? It means half a century of people telling me I wasn't good enough, wasn't smart enough, didn't have the looks or the talent, and 50 years of proving every one of them wrong. And now you sit there, in your comfortable chair with your comfortable job, and think you can dismiss all of that with a smirk because it fits your narrative. Joy tried to interject, but Stallone raised his hand sharply, silencing her mid-breath. You want to talk about diversity and representation? Fine, let's talk honestly. When I wrote Rocky, I was broke, an unknown actor from Philadelphia. The studios wanted to buy my script but cast a big-name star instead. I said no. I starved. I sold my dog to make rent. I risked everything because I believed in that character and what he stood for. That wasn't privilege. Joy. That was survival. And that story, the story of a working-class bum from South Philly refusing to stay down, wasn't just a movie. It was representation for millions of people who had never seen themselves as heroes on screen. Joy attempted a weak rebuttal, her voice faltering. But that was then. No, Stallone roared, his fist slamming against the table with a crack that made the microphones pop. That's now. That's every damn day. You think because I've had success I've forgotten what it's like to be counted out? You think I don't know what it feels like to have people like you sitting in judgment, deciding who deserves a chance? Don't fool yourself, Joy. The cameras captured everything. The fury in his eyes, the raw pain under the anger, the vulnerability of a man stripped of his Hollywood polish and fighting not just for respect but for his very dignity. He straightened his jacket, his gaze shifting directly to the lens, bypassing Joy entirely. To everyone watching at home, I came here today to talk about the work I love, about stories that matter, about characters who have meant something to people for generations. Instead, I got ambushed by someone who thinks success is a crime and longevity is something to be mocked. You want to know about making room for new talent? I produced dozens of actors, directors, and writers who got their first breaks with me. I've put my own money on the line to give young filmmakers opportunities when studios wouldn't touch them. I've mentored, I've created, I've built platforms for others, and somehow that still isn't enough for you. Joy sat frozen, the blood drained from her face, her earlier bravado replaced with stunned silence as Stallone's words cut deeper than any scripted jab ever could. But I guess none of that matters, Stallone went on, his voice lowering to an icy calm. Because all you wanted today wasn't a conversation, it was a spectacle. You wanted to look righteous while tearing down someone who's done nothing but fight for everything he has. With deliberate precision, Stallone unclipped his microphone, the metallic click echoing like a gunshot across the dead-silent studio. I'm done, he declared flatly. This isn't journalism. This is ambush television. And I don't have to sit here and let myself be disrespected. He rose to his feet and walked off the set with the same commanding presence that had carried him through decades of cinematic battles, the studio audience breaking into a confused murmur that quickly swelled into applause. The camera stayed fixed on Joy, whose expression betrayed both shock and a dawning realization that she had just been dismantled on her own stage. The other hosts sat frozen, their discomfort painted across their faces, as what had begun as a routine promo had mutated into a cultural moment that will be dissected and replayed endlessly. For those few explosive minutes, viewers had seen something raw, unscripted, Unforgettable, a Hollywood legend unleashing half a century of pent-up fire and walking away with his dignity intact while leaving his host in stunned silence. And as the screen faded to commercial, one truth was undeniable. This was not just another morning show interview. This was history in the making.